Hey, it's Love Coach Heidi. Welcome back for another video. I am so glad that you're here. And if you're new here, welcome home. Are you in the right place? Well, if you have a relationship of any kind in your life that causes you confusion, anxiety, resentment, or pain, in other words, a dysfunctional relationship, and you want to learn how to get the tools you need to have the love you really deserve, you definitely are in the right place. There's not a more frustrating relationship on the planet, from my perspective, than a relationship with an addict or an alcoholic. You rack your brain to try to figure out how to save this person's life ultimately. That's really what's at stake at the end of the day. You want to learn how to fix this. You want to learn how to get your loved one back. You could shake them awake. You know they're in there somewhere. You just believe that if you could say the right thing or do the right thing, you're going to wake them up from this nightmare that they're living, and you're going to get them back. And your family can be fixed, and everybody can come back together again. I know that feeling firsthand. I know that feeling extremely well. I know that feeling of looking over at your loved one and feeling like they're lost and just wanting to call them home. I get it. And I want to tell you, you're in the right place to learn how to deal with this situation in your life. Because likely what you've been doing out of love, out of concern, out of care. But it's crazy, isn't it? Because it's not working. And you're racking your brain thinking, what do you need to do? So I'm going to give you some of those tools today. I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that don't work, like trying to control an addict's behavior. If you've ever been in that situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Just going to the ends of the earth to try to stop bad things from happening. I've been doing this work for a really long time, and part of the journey, a codependency work, but on my journey, I started teaching at one of the world's leading drug and alcohol treatment centers. I did that for about 8 years before I just went into full private coaching practice. But there, I co-created and ran a family program. And every single month, hundreds of families came through that program, raising their hand, telling the stories about what they would do to try to control their loved one's behavior, whether it was a child they had or a spouse, where they're doling out the medication, trying to figure out how to detox people in the back bedroom, trying to research what is Ativan and how to detox somebody in the first place, figuring out how to, is marijuana better than alcohol? And just you're working harder on somebody's recovery than they are. I get that. So I want to talk to you today about where these behaviors come from and kind of relate to you a little bit and talk about the impact of these behaviors on your loved one. Is there an impact? Are you getting through? And then if you're not getting through, what's the impact on you to continue these behaviors? And then what's a better way? What's a better strategy that's going to help you and your entire family? I'm so glad to be doing this series on addiction. I want to upload a video every Thursday on addiction so that you can come back to this channel. Make sure you subscribe, get the notification. So if it's addiction that you're dealing with, you can come back here as a constant resource for yourself to learn, to be equipped with the education, the tools, the resources that you need to learn how to deal with this. I've been dealing with this my whole life, it feels like, dealing in dysfunction since the early 70s. All right, long time, lots of experience. In fact, I remember the first time thinking that I had some kind of control over this. My dad was an alcoholic, and every weekend we would go and he would pick us up every other weekend, right? My parents were divorced, and my dad would pick us up, and around 5 or 6 is when we first started doing this, going for weekends with my dad. And one of the first things, like, we start the weekend off and already I'm feeling like endangered because my dad never drove anywhere when he picked us up without a Miller Lite between his legs. So we'd get in the car, and who would ever call shotgun with the siblings would sit in the front seat, and there'd be a 6-pack on the floor next to your feet. And he would reach over and grab that cold, wet 6-pack and smack it against your leg. And then what he would do is he would take the beer and he could open the can and down it and take his eyes off the road while he drank the entire beer. Basically, it felt like, right? It felt like an eternity to a 5-year-old and watching this happen. And I just remember being paralyzed with terror, thinking, we're going to die today. I grew up in the backwoods of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, right on the border there, in coal country, where there were no guardrails back in those days. And everything to a 5 or 6-year-old felt like a cliff. So I just remember thinking, we're going to die today. We're going to careen. He's going to be drunk driving. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. I just thought he's not paying attention to where he's going. And it would be stress me out. So I thought we were going to die. So I needed to take control. I invented a little game. I never called shotgun. I would sit right behind my dad, right behind him so I could see right over his ear. And I had a little imaginary steering wheel, a little brake, and a gas pedal. And I would steer the car from the back seat of a little 5-year-old. And I just remember he'd take his eyes off the road and I'd be hypervigilant. I'd take over the wheel, my imaginary steering wheel from the back seat. And as long as I was hypervigilant and in control and I was watching what was going on, nothing too bad was going to happen. And the result actually was miraculous. Nothing bad did ever happen. We never wrecked. So I thought as a 5-year-old that I prevented that bad thing from happening. And that instilled in me this pattern of control, of feeling hypervigilant, like I needed to control everything around me. And if you grew up in a family of addiction or dysfunction or abuse, you know this hypervigilance extremely well. Thinking that you can control the toxic or dysfunctional person in your life. If you just say the right thing or do the right thing or have the right strategy. And I would try other things too. I would find the alcohol. My dad used to hide it in the house, the vodka. And he hid it in the toilet tank, behind the toilet seat. You know, the tank of the toilet? He would hide it back there. Now, I'm not a person who's normally just going to go looking behind in toilet tanks unless, oh my gosh, it's overflowing and I've got to fix it. And even then, I'm likely to just walk away. But back then, I discovered that's where he would hide it. And so I would take it out of the toilet tank, dump the vodka down the drain, and put the bottle back, thinking he would know it was me that did that and be so compelled with guilt and shame that he would feel so bad about being found out that he would just quit drinking. And sometimes that would work. Sometimes I'd go back and the bottle wouldn't be full. The bottle would be gone. But sometimes I would go back and there'd be a brand new bottle there or a new bottle in a new spot. And then I would think I failed. So I was always trying to maneuver and strategize and find a better way to control my dad's drinking. If I just plead with him. Maybe I would have conversations with him. Maybe he just doesn't know what he's doing. In fact, he would, after work every day as a functioning alcoholic, he would down a bunch of beers after work and not really even I thought maybe he just doesn't even know how much he's drinking. So what I would do is when he would go to sleep, I would line up the beer cans at the bottom of the steps so that he'd come down in the morning like a house of cards, but a house of beer cans, so that he'd be confronted with how much he's drinking. So if he just could see how much he's drinking, then that'll compel him to stop because he'll be so embarrassed and ashamed and just like, wow, the light bulb will go off. That's what I thought. And sometimes, guess what? When I'd make that tower of beer, it would work and he wouldn't drink as much that day. So what do you think I thought as a 10-year-old? I thought, wow, I have some sense of control. Now, as children, we really too believe that the world revolves around us. It's been said that all 5-year-olds are narcissistic. They think that they're the center of the universe. So it's likely, if you grew up in addiction, that you believed that you did have a role in the drinking, that it was your fault, that you could control it, you could mitigate it. But even as an adult, you have a spouse, you have a wife or a husband that's an active alcoholic, and you think that just by pointing out how much they're drinking, having these long lectured conversations with them, or by dumping out their alcohol behind their back, or a child, you think by locking up their prescription medication and just giving it to them in the proper doses will do the thing. Or you think those are all ways of controlling the addiction, attempting to control the alcoholic or the addict. And here's what I know for sure. If that worked, if my love for my dad was enough and my brilliant plans of controlling his addiction was enough, my dad wouldn't have died from this disease. What I know for sure is as much as I wanted to control and fix the situation that was happening, I had absolutely no control, and neither do you. Wow. What do you do with that? What do you do if you cannot control it? If you cannot find a way to mitigate the stress, anxiety, fallout, shrapnel that happens? What do you do? At a certain point in your relationship with your loved one, whoever that is, a child, a spouse, a parent, the only thing that you can decide is how you're going to choose to experience your loved one's addiction, how you're going to choose to participate in it. Later on as an adult, I realized I would set ultimatums with my dad instead of boundaries. And we need to know the difference between an ultimatum and a boundary. An ultimatum is just like a desperate plea, a manipulation to try to get somebody to change their behavior. If you drink on Christmas or you ruin Thanksgiving again, I'm never talking to you again. I'm going to be so angry. Well, alcoholics and addicts use on holidays because they're addicts, active alcoholics and addicts, not because they don't love you or don't care enough about you. That's what I used to think, that if my dad just loved me enough, he would quit. But I realize now that love has nothing to do with it. If love was enough, everybody'd be sober. Love is not enough. So for me, I switched over between those ultimatums because, again, he would drink on Christmas or ruin Thanksgiving, and then I would be full of resentment, anxiety, and pain and confusion. Like, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? A boundary is, Dad, if you come over and you drink on Christmas or you drink on Thanksgiving or you're high or you're drunk or whatever that it is, excuse me, I will remove myself from the situation. I will ask you to leave. I will end the visit. And now I remember saying to my dad at one point on his journey to recover, on his journey through addiction, we'll talk about he did try to, excuse me, he did try to recover at one point, and I'll share that story with you another time. But there was a point in my dad's addiction where I said to him, Dad, I love you so much, especially on holidays and visits and things like this. Dad, I love you so much, but when you drink, I feel really uncomfortable and triggered up, and it makes me super anxious. So if you're going to drink or I notice that you're drunk, I will be leaving. And that's it. It's how you choose to experience that addict or alcoholic when you realize that you have no control. And then I would notice, I wouldn't feel bad when my dad, who was actively alcoholic, would start to drink. I'd say, oh, now I have to leave. I'd say, okay, that's my cue. So I would say to him when I would visit him and he would be getting drunk or being under the influence, hey, Dad, I see that you're drinking. That's my, hey, I'm going to go because I'm uncomfortable. And that's it. I love you. I'll see you again at another time, but I just can't, I'm just not going to be around this today. And I'm not looking for a fight. I'm not looking for a justification, a rationalization. I'm looking to just say the thing and leave the situation, not stick around, not try to be talked out of my boundary. I'm literally just announcing what I'm doing. That's it. And I set that boundary before that happened so he would know what to expect. But here's the truth. When somebody's under the influence, all right, you don't have access to this neocortex, the thinking part of their brain. You don't have access. So any lecturing or conversations or, Dad, I told you that if you were going to drink, I was going to go. It's just like falling on deaf ears. It's like talking to a 2-year-old in the middle of a tantrum. Nobody's home. When you're trying to deal with rationalizing and explaining and lecturing when you're dealing with an active alcoholic, just nobody's home. So I want you to take a look at what's the first step out of this? What do we need to do? The first step for you is to take a look at how are you trying to control the addict or alcoholic's behavior? What do you do on a regular basis to try to scurry around, either preventing bad things from happening or cleaning up the mess when bad things do happen? What are you doing? Awareness is the first step. The second step is getting communication about those things. Seek out somebody that can help you navigate. Now, when I work with somebody, there are lots of free resources, okay? There's Al-Anon. You can go to Al-Anon meetings where you get the support online. They have meetings. But for me, What a lot of my clients tell me is that Al-Anon meetings are that great place to go to feel heard and to get that kind of reflected back support where you feel like you're not alone. But if you actually want strategic coaching, to sit with somebody and say, here's what's working, looks like what's working and what's not working. Here's what kind of to do and not to do in a situation like that. If you want very clear, direct advice that's not going to beat around the bush, that's going to hear your unique situation and give you the exact action steps to take, then I want you to go over to lovecoachheidi.com and reach out for a consultation or schedule a session so we can look at your unique situation and figure out what to do. If it's just the support that you need or finances are an issue for you, consider seeking out Al-Anon and starting to get involved in a program like that. Okay? Until next time, make sure you're subscribed here. Like the video, subscribe to the video, or if you're incognito and you want to be anonymous, I totally get that. Send me a private message. But make sure you're subscribed to this channel, okay? So we talk a lot about dysfunctional and toxic relationships, addiction just being one of those, all right? I love you so much. I hope you have an amazing day today. Take excellent care of yourself, and I'll see you really soon in another video. Bye-bye.